The night 185,000 soldiers died. What really happened outside Jerusalem 701 BC? The most powerful army in the world has surrounded Jerusalem. Sennacherib, king of Assyria, has never lost a siege, not once. In the previous 3 years alone, he destroyed 46 cities in Judah. He took Lachish, a fortified city on a hilltop, in weeks. He deported over 200,000 people. He carved his victories into the stone walls of his palace in Nineveh in relief so detailed that archaeologists can reconstruct the battles blow by blow. Now his army is camped outside Jerusalem. The siege ramps are being built. The battering rams are ready. The city has no allies. Egypt promised help and sent nothing. The northern kingdom of Israel, the brothers of Judah, had already been destroyed. Sennacherib's own inscription boasts that he had trapped Hezekiah in Jerusalem like a caged bird. 185,000 soldiers. To put that number in context, that is larger than the entire population of Salt Lake City today. Every man, woman, and child in that city. An army that size, surrounding Jerusalem's walls. The greatest military machine the ancient world had ever seen. And then morning came. 2 Kings 19:35. That night the angel of the Lord went out and put to death 185,000 in the Assyrian camp. When the people got up the next morning, there were all the dead bodies. One night. No battle. No survivors recorded. The army that had never been stopped. Sennacherib packed up his camp and went home. He never returned to Jerusalem. He never besieged it again. The city he had described as a cage, he walked away from it. For 2,700 years, historians, scientists, and military scholars have been asking the same question. What actually happened that night? Today we investigate. Before we look at the night itself, let me show you how we know what we know. 3 completely independent sources recorded this event. That is extraordinary. Most ancient battles survive in one account, usually from the victor. This one has 3. Source 1, the Bible. 2 Kings 19, Isaiah 37, 2 Chronicles 32. 3 separate biblical authors recording the same event from the Israelite perspective. The Malach, the Hebrew word for messenger, for angel, went out in the night. By morning, 185,000 were dead. Sennacherib withdrew. Source 2, Sennacherib's own prism. A clay hexagonal cylinder discovered in the ruins of Nineveh in 1830, now housed at the Oriental Institute in Chicago. Sennacherib commissioned this inscription to record his greatest victories. About Jerusalem, he writes, "He trapped Hezekiah like a caged bird. He received tribute. He went home." Notice what the prism does not say. It does not claim to have taken Jerusalem. It does not describe a siege victory. For a king who carved every military triumph into stone in elaborate detail, his account of Jerusalem is conspicuously thin. Scholars call this the argument from silence. Sennacherib could not record what happened outside Jerusalem, because what happened was not a victory he could describe. Source 3, Herodotus. The Greek historian, writing approximately 250 years after the event, recorded a version of this story in his histories. He places the decisive moment near Pelusium in Egypt, rather than Jerusalem. The geography differs, but the outcome matches exactly. Sennacherib's army was destroyed overnight. In Herodotus's version, field mice gnawed through the bowstrings and leather shield straps of the Assyrian soldiers, leaving them unable to fight. By morning, they fled. Thousands died. Herodotus heard a different version of the same event from different sources and preserved it across centuries. He described the mechanism differently. He agreed on the result completely. These aren't guesses. 3 independent sources from 3 different cultures, Israelite, Assyrian, and Greek, all recording that Sennacherib's army was destroyed outside Jerusalem and that he went home without taking the city. And in 2024, researcher Stephen Compton published a study in Near Eastern Archaeology identifying the probable location of Sennacherib's siege camp outside Jerusalem. He cross-referenced carvings from the walls of Sennacherib's palace in Nineveh, which depicted his military camps in precise architectural detail, with early 20th century aerial photographs of the Jerusalem area. He found an oval-shaped structure north of the city matching the standard design of Assyrian royal camps. Archaeological surveys of the site revealed pottery sherds dating precisely to the period of Sennacherib's campaign. And then, nothing. No human activity at the site for another 2,600 years. A camp that was occupied once, and then abandoned suddenly, and never used again. Picture Compton at that site, standing on a hillside outside Jerusalem, matching the landscape beneath his feet to a stone carving made 2,700 years ago in Nineveh. The same hill, the same road, the same oval outline in the earth. He is standing where the camp was, and the camp was abandoned. Now let's talk about who Sennacherib was, because to understand what happened that night, you need to understand what it meant for this particular army to fail. Sennacherib inherited the greatest military empire the ancient world had yet produced. The Neo-Assyrian Empire at its peak stretched from modern Iran to modern Egypt. Its army was the first in history to use iron weapons systematically, harder, sharper, more durable than the bronze weapons of its enemies. It pioneered siege warfare, earthen ramps, battering rams, mobile siege towers. The Assyrians invented the playbook that armies would follow for 1,000 years. Sennacherib himself was methodical and meticulous. His palace at Nineveh covered 80 rooms. The walls were covered in stone reliefs, carved visual records of his campaigns in extraordinary detail. The Siege of Lachish relief, now in the British Museum, shows the Assyrian assault on a hilltop city with such precision that archaeologists used it to reconstruct the battle. The ramp angle, the position of the siege engines, the posture of the defenders on the walls. He recorded everything. He forgot nothing. He lost nothing. Until Jerusalem. To understand what Jerusalem was supposed to become, you need to understand what happened to Lachish 6 weeks earlier. Lachish was the second most important city in Judah. Fortified walls, a steep hilltop with natural defenses on 3 sides, experienced defenders with archers, weapons, and every advantage a walled city could have. Sennacherib's army arrived. They built a siege ramp from the valley floor up the southern slope, the largest surviving siege ramp in the ancient Near East, excavated as recently as 2017, still visible today. They pushed siege towers up the ramp. The towers had battering rams at the front and archers on top firing down into the defenders. The Lachish relief in the British Museum shows what came next. Prisoners impaled on stakes outside the city as a warning to those still inside. Deportees walking in long columns away from their burning homes. Men, women, children, livestock, everything that had made Lachish a living city, stripped away and marched into Assyrian exile. Sennacherib himself sat on a throne outside the city to receive the surrender. He had a caption carved into the stone above him. Sennacherib, king of the world, king of Assyria, sat upon a throne and passed in review the booty taken from Lachish. That was the plan for Jerusalem. The same ramp, the same towers, the same throne outside the gates, the same deportation columns moving east toward Nineveh. Have you ever watched something fall and known you were next? That is what the people inside Jerusalem's walls were living. They had seen the smoke from Lachish. They had watched the refugees arrive. They had heard the stories. They knew exactly what Assyrian victory looked like, and they knew there was nothing they could do to stop it. He got to Jerusalem. He set up camp. He sent his field commander Rabshakeh to stand outside the city walls and shout at the defenders. 2 Kings 18:19. Hear the word of the great king, the king of Assyria. What is your basis for this confidence? Do you think that mere words are a sufficient strategy and power for war? He listed the gods of every nation Sennacherib had already defeated. He asked which of them had saved their people. He implied that Yahweh would do no better. Close your eyes. You are standing on the walls of Jerusalem. It is night. The torches are burning behind you, casting long shadows down into the valley below. And down there, the fires of 185,000 soldiers stretch to the horizon in every direction. You have been watching those fires for weeks. They do not move. They do not diminish. Every morning you wake up and they are still there. Closer, if anything. You know what they did to Lachish. You watched the smoke from here. You know what the siege towers do when they reach a wall. You know what happens to the people inside when the gates fall. And you know that no army is coming to help you. Egypt promised and sent nothing. The north is already gone. There is no rescue on the road. There is only the wall beneath your feet and the fires below and the sound of 185,000 men preparing for mourning. Hezekiah is in the temple. He has received a letter from Sennacherib, a written ultimatum. He has spread it out before the Lord on the altar. He is not reading military reports. He is not consulting his generals. He is holding a piece of paper with the words of the most powerful king in the world written on it, and he is praying out loud. Isaiah 37:15-20. Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, enthroned between the cherubim, you alone are God over all the kingdoms of the earth. You have made heaven and earth. Give ear, Lord, and hear. Open your eyes, Lord, and see. Listen to all the words Sennacherib has sent to ridicule the living God. He reads the letter to God. He holds up the words of the enemy and reads them to the one the enemy has mocked. Now, Lord our God, deliver us from his hand, so that all the kingdoms of the earth may know that you, Lord, are the only God. That is the prayer. Not deliver us so we can survive. Deliver us so that all the kingdoms of the earth will know. Outside the walls, 185,000 soldiers. Inside, a king reading an enemy's letter to God in the dark. The prophet Isaiah sends a messenger back with an answer. Isaiah 37:33. He will not enter this city or shoot an arrow here. He will not come before it with shield or build a siege ramp against it. By the way that he came, he will return. He will not enter this city, declares the Lord. That night, the Malach went out. Now here is where it gets scientifically extraordinary. Because modern researchers have not simply accepted the supernatural account or rejected it. They have asked a different question. Is there a physical mechanism consistent with what was observed? The answer that has gained the most traction among historians and scientists is septicemic plague, dever in Hebrew, the word used throughout the Old Testament for sudden, catastrophic death that comes from God. Septicemic plague is a form of bubonic plague that enters the bloodstream directly. There are no visible buboes. The victim appears healthy until the bacteria reach a critical threshold in the blood. Then organ failure begins. Then death. Rapidly. Often within 24 hours of the first symptoms. The survival rate of untreated septicemic plague is essentially zero. A large army camped in fixed positions, which Assyrian siege armies were, is uniquely vulnerable to plague. Thousands of men in close proximity. A supply chain bringing food and animals into a central camp. Rats and fleas concentrated by the density of the encampment. In 1665, the same mechanism killed 100,000 people in London in 18 months. At the siege of Kaffa in 1346, plague destroyed a Mongol army so completely that the survivors fled by ship, inadvertently carrying the Black Death into Europe. Remember what Herodotus recorded: field mice. Ancient observers seeing rats and mice in a camp experiencing sudden mass death would not have understood the mechanism. They saw the animals. They saw the deaths. They connected them. Do the math with me. 185,000 men in a fixed camp. Septicemic plague with a 100% fatality rate and a 24-hour progression. If a sufficient number of flea-infested rats entered the camp and the bacteria reached critical transmission threshold, the timeline is physically possible. Not certain. Possible. Here is what no scientific model can account for. The timing. An army that had just destroyed 46 cities. An army that had never been stopped. An army camped outside a city that had no military option to defeat it. That army was destroyed in one night. Not over weeks, not over months. One night, on the eve of what should have been a routine siege victory. Every historian who has studied this event notes the same anomaly. Sennacherib was not a man who retreated. He was not a man who accepted failure. His inscriptions record no defeat in his entire career, except this one, by conspicuous omission. Something stopped him. Something he could not explain, could not record, could not claim as a victory or incorporate into the narrative of his reign. He went home, and he never came back. And then the people of Jerusalem woke up. They climbed the walls. They looked out at the camp below. And what they saw will stay with you. The tents were still standing, every one of them. The fires had burned down to cold ash during the night. No one had added wood. No one had tended them. The cooking pots were still in place. The weapons stacked where soldiers had left them the evening before. The siege towers stood motionless on the slope, and the bodies, everywhere, still, in the positions they had fallen. No wounds from battle, no signs of fighting between men. The commanders in their tents, the officers in their posts, the soldiers in their formations, dead, all of them, in one night, without a single arrow fired from the walls. 2 Chronicles 32:21. And the Lord sent an angel who annihilated all the fighting men and the commanders and officers in the camp of the Assyrian king. The commanders, the officers, the soldiers, everyone. Sennacherib survived his return home by approximately 20 years. According to 2 Kings 19:37, he was assassinated in the temple of his god Nisroch by his own sons. An Assyrian inscription of his successor Esarhaddon confirms this explicitly, that Sennacherib was killed and that his sons fled. 4 completely independent inscriptions confirm the biblical account of his assassination. The king who taunted Hezekiah about the gods who had failed to protect their people was killed by his own sons in his own temple. I keep returning to one detail in the account that most people read past. Isaiah 37:21. Because you have prayed to me concerning Sennacherib, king of Assyria, this is what will happen. Because you prayed. The entire sequence, the army, the boast, the terror inside the walls, the night, the morning, begins with a king tearing his clothes and going to the temple and spreading an enemy's letter before God and reading it aloud. Not raising an army, not negotiating, not fleeing. Reading the enemy's words to God and asking him to act, not for Jerusalem's sake, but so that all the kingdoms of the earth would know. Hezekiah did not know what would happen. He prayed into a silence that had given him no visible reason for confidence. The northern kingdom, his brothers, had prayed and been destroyed. Lachish had fallen in weeks, and Rabshakeh had said so himself, standing outside the walls within earshot of everyone on the ramparts, which God has saved his people from Assyria. And Hezekiah prayed anyway, and read the letter to God, and waited. Hezekiah's tunnel is still there. You can walk through it today, knee-deep in water, 530 meters of darkness cut through solid rock. The same water that kept Jerusalem alive during the siege. The same engineering Hezekiah commissioned, because he believed a siege was coming, and he prepared for it, and he prayed about it. Both things simultaneously. He prepared as if everything depended on him. He prayed as if everything depended on God. Because both were true. 185,000 soldiers, one night, 3 sources, 1 prayer. And the most powerful army in the ancient world discovered that power has a limit. That walls have a guardian that no siege engine can breach. That the king who boasted about the gods who could not save their people encountered a God who did. The science can propose a mechanism. The Deaver can explain the biology. It cannot explain the night. What would you have done standing on those walls the morning after? When you looked out and the tents were still standing and the fires were cold and the army was gone. If this investigation changed the way you read 2 Kings 19, share it with someone who thinks the Bible is just stories. Subscribe so you don't miss what we are investigating next. 701 BC, 185,000 soldiers, one night, and a king on his knees in the temple who had no reason to believe it would work, except that he believed.